12 countries. Black people are fleeing. What's driving them to this decision? They don't issue deportation orders. They don't hang signs saying, "No black people." But hundreds of thousands of black individuals are quietly disappearing from countries once praised as paradise. France, China, India. They don't say leave, but they make it impossible for you to stay. This is no longer migration. This is a mass exodus the world is trying to hide. Libya, where humans are auctioned like livestock. This isn't a scene from a science fiction movie. This is 21st century Libya, where real slave markets exist in the desert, run by armed groups and human trafficking networks. Every day, hundreds of black people from Nigeria, Niger, Mali, Eritrea are captured, tortured, raped, and priced like animals. A survivor recounted, "They tied me up with wire, electrocuted me, and forced me to call my mother. I cried, my mother cried, and she had to sell our last house to ransom me. But many people have no one to call. They slowly wither away or are sold off without a trace." Libya is no longer a transit point. It's a living graveyard for border-crossing dreams, where being black means being a tradable asset. And the biggest tragedy? European governments know this, but they don't intervene. On the contrary, they fund Libyan border forces to keep migrants from reaching European soil. In other words, instead of rescuing, they pay to lock the gates of hell. As long as they don't hear the screams from inside. The migrant detention centers in Libya, run by government and militias, are sites of torture, rape, forced labor, and killings. According to the UN, this situation could constitute crimes against humanity, yet almost no one is prosecuted. And black people, once again, are the bodies sacrificed for the false peace of the civilized world. If you had known this already, would you have stayed silent or spoken out? Tell me, whose side are you on in this story? China, where skin color is treated as a threat. Imagine you're living in Guangzhou, a bustling city with the largest African community in Asia. You work, you have friends, life feels normal. Then one morning, your landlord demands you move out immediately, not because you owe rent, but simply because you're black. During the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic, a wave of blatant discrimination swept across China. Black people were labeled disease carriers, despite no proof, no official notice. They were denied housing, kicked out of hotels, banned from supermarkets, and subjected to discriminatory health checks. No law spelled it out, but signs saying "No foreigners allowed," code for black people, suddenly popped up everywhere like a silent punishment. A Nigerian student recounted, "I was forced to test 3 times a week even without symptoms. I couldn't eat at restaurants, couldn't sleep in the dorms. Everywhere I went, people stared like I was a biohazard." Discrimination in China is no longer a whisper in the shadows. It's legitimized through local government actions, media-fueled fear, and the cold stares black people endure every day. Ironically, at the same time, China is pouring money into Africa, signing partnerships, building infrastructure, funding African governments. Yet for Africans living in China, they're treated like aliens, with no refuge, no voice, and no right to exist normally. They're not just evicted, they're erased from society. The silence of the legal system, the invisibility of the community, and the constant fear of being detained, jailed, or deported have led many to leave for good. And for them, China is no longer a place of opportunity, but a painful memory of being denied humanity just for their skin color. Saudi Arabia, and when a passport becomes shackles. She came to Riyadh chasing a dream, a single mother from Ethiopia, willing to leave home behind to work as a housemaid. But just weeks after setting foot in Saudi Arabia, she realized this wasn't a dream, it was a trap. Her passport was confiscated, her phone taken. She worked from dawn until midnight. No days off, no salary, no permission to leave the house. When she protested, her employer threatened to call the police. But here, the kafala system makes that possible. Kafala, A framework where foreign workers are entirely dependent on their employers, and for thousands of Africans, it means an existence without human rights. No freedom, no voice, no legal protection. A Ghanaian construction worker shared, "I was held for 2 years. No pay, no documents, no idea when I'd get to go home." In a land considered holy, some people are living like modern-day slaves, in this very century, in the heart of the 21st century. Russia, where existing is already a crime. In a place as cold as Russia, the chill doesn't just come from the weather, but from the stares, the words, and the ruthless indifference of a society toward those who are different. You don't need to do anything wrong to be attacked. You don't have to break the law to be insulted. Just being black, standing in a Moscow metro station, is enough to make you a target. A young man of African descent was beaten by a group of strangers in a crowded area. No one intervened. No one asked questions. The police showed up, but they just stood there. In Russia, hate crimes against black people aren't rare. Many victims recall being spat on in grocery stores, called slurs on buses, or shoved on the street without a single glance of concern. A student from Cameroon tearfully shared, "I came here to study. I broke no law, but every time I step outside, I ask myself, will I make it back today?" In Russia, the law may exist, but not for everyone. Police may appear, but not to protect those of a different skin tone. When a society assumes that black people deserve poor treatment, then silence becomes more than complicity. It becomes an unspoken verdict. And in a place like this, merely existing is already a dangerous act. Algeria, when your presence is labeled a burden. 12 countries black people are fleeing. What's driving them to this decision? No sentence, no court, no charge. Just a quiet morning and a cold knock at the door from police. Pack your things. Leave now. No right to object, no explanation. And just hours later, hundreds of black people are herded onto trucks, driven straight to the desert border as if they were unwanted cargo. In Algeria, the deportation of black migrants from African countries has become a silent yet repeated campaign. No notice, no paperwork, no human rights. They don't care if you've lived here 5 years or 15. No one asks what you've contributed or what grade your child is in. To them, you're a social burden, something to be cleared out to preserve an image of stability. A man from Mali recalled the moment he was arrested on his way to work. "I wasn't allowed a phone call, not a single word. They shoved me and dozens of others into a sealed cargo truck. No water, no food. And after 12 hours, we were dumped in the middle of the Niger desert, not just losing our homes, but our dignity too." Some never make it back. Some children vanish into the 122-degree heat and hunger, not because they broke the law, but because their existence was deemed excessive. The media barely mentions it. No images, no numbers, no wails heard. The world turns away. Allied governments stay silent. Wealthy nations call it an internal issue. As long as black people don't cross into Europe, they don't bother asking where they're being taken. Ukraine, one war, two realities. People often say, war doesn't see color. But in Ukraine, amid blaring sirens, ruined streets, and crowds fleeing through the freezing cold, a quiet truth emerges. Not everyone gets to escape the same way. When the war broke out, thousands rushed to the train stations carrying bags, eyes filled with panic. Mothers clutched babies, fathers helped elderly parents, all with one goal: to live. But in the chaos that seemed to treat everyone equally, an invisible line appeared between white and black. White people, whether Ukrainian citizens or European tourists, were guided to priority zones, given instructions, even offered snacks and calming words. Black people, mostly African students or migrant workers, were pushed aside. No explanation, no one to defend them. A Nigerian medical student recalled, "I waited at the station for over 9 hours. When it was finally my turn, a guard blocked me and said the train was full. But right after that, I saw a group of white men board with no problem. I couldn't cry. I just stood frozen, then walked back to my room as explosions echoed overhead. A group of Ghanaian students were forced to stand in sub-zero weather, denied shelter because of Ukrainians first. A Cameroonian man was beaten while trying to get his wife and children onto a train, even though they had all the required documents. No one asks for privilege during war, but what they need is the right to be treated as human. War should bring people closer, but here it exposed a brutal divide where skin color decides who gets to live and who gets left behind. Some call it a coordination mishap. Others blame the chaos. But those who were pushed out of relief lines, who were screamed at for being black foreigners, all know the truth. This wasn't an accident. This was structural discrimination disguised as humanitarian protocol. Same war, same fear of falling bombs. But for many black people, Ukraine wasn't just a place to flee from. It was where they first truly understood. Their lives were valued differently, just because of their skin. India, where black means criminal by default. Right in crowded New Delhi, an African student was beaten in broad daylight. No one asked his name. No one verified any rumor. People only saw his dark skin, and that was enough to condemn him. No one stepped in. No one spoke up. No one was surprised. In India, black people, especially students, workers, or migrants from Africa, live under a constant cloud of suspicion and bias. They're denied housing just because neighbors don't approve. They're labeled drug dealers, sex workers, troublemakers, even when doing nothing but walking down the street. A young woman from Kenya recalled, "I've lived here 4 years. I speak Hindi. I have Indian friends. But every time I go outside, I have to lower my head, cover up, and walk fast, because I fear people's stares. I've done nothing wrong, but I always feel like I'm asking permission just to exist. Here you can be kind, smart, hardworking, but your skin color comes with a built-in social sentence. You're an outsider, a threat, a potential problem, and worst of all, not worth protecting." There's no law allowing discrimination, but there's no law truly stopping it either. Black people in India don't just face insults, they endure chronic isolation, to the point where merely being present is considered a nuisance to the society around them. Turkey. No matter how long you stay, you're still an outsider. Turkey doesn't have fiery anti-black protests. No public signs banning black people hang in the streets. But for many black residents here, discrimination feels like a thin mist. Not enough to choke you, but always enough to send a chill down your spine. You may speak Turkish like a native. You may live in Istanbul for 10 years, work, pay taxes, behave properly. But no matter what you do, you're still not part of this place. You walk into a cafe and feel the suspicious glances. You apply for a job and are told the position is filled. But then, a Turkish woman walks in, gets greeted, offered a seat, and lands an interview. You search for housing and get turned down because the lease is signed. Yet the place stays empty for a whole month. A Somali woman living in Ankara recalled, "I try to blend in, not cause trouble, always act politely. But in their eyes, I'm still different. Still the one who came in from the outside, and should stay outside." Black people in Turkey aren't driven out, but they've never been welcomed either. They live among the community, but don't belong to it. They exist, but are never acknowledged. Many describe life in Turkey as living behind a thick pane of glass. They can see everything, hear the laughter, watch relationships form around them, but are never invited in. The isolation doesn't come from open hostility, but from thousands of tiny signs, the passing glance, the prolonged silence, and the politely repeated rejections. A Nigerian man working in tech shared, "I have a degree, experience, speak Turkish, but still wasn't promoted. Newer hires, white or Turkish, were chosen as team leads within months. I asked why, and they simply said, clients prefer someone more relatable." In Turkey, the issue isn't what is said, it's what no one dares to say. No one shouts that you don't belong, but every door quietly closes. Every opportunity quietly slips away, without explanation. It's exclusion without a name, but heavy as stone. And after years of enduring it, many decide to leave. Not because they hate Turkey, but because they don't want to spend a lifetime playing the guest in a home that never truly welcomed them. Brazil, Afro on the surface, but brutal reality for Black people. Brazil is often praised as the land of hypnotic samba, vibrant carnival, and proud Afro heritage. But if that's all you see, you're only looking at half the picture. The other half is blood, tears, and the silence of millions of Black people living in enduring injustice. In a country where over half the population is Black, they make up more than 75% of murder victims each year. These deaths often come without reason, or with only one reason: skin color. They are musicians leaving a gig, workers heading home, students walking after class, fathers carrying bread for their kids. But to the police, to gangs, to the racist system, they are the default suspect. A 22-year-old Black man was shot dead in Rio de Janeiro. He wasn't armed. He didn't resist. He was just buying bread. Police said it was a mistake, but his family said it wasn't a mistake. He was shot because he was Black. In Brazil, Black people are born already behind. They live in slums, prone to violent raids. They're denied job opportunities or accept lower pay for the same work. And every day, they learn how to stay unnoticed just to survive. A Black mother tearfully shared, "I don't teach my son to dream big. I teach him how not to get shot. Don't wear a hoodie, don't run, don't look down when called, and never react if someone insults you. I just want you to come home alive." Brazil may take pride in its Afro-colored arts, music, and festivals. But for millions of Black people here, skin color remains a suspended sentence, hanging every single day. France, liberty, equality, fraternity. But not for everyone. In France, you can be born in Paris, speak flawless French, excel in school, follow every law, but if you're Black, that still won't save you from society's suspicious gaze. On some days, you might be stopped by police for ID checks 3 times, not for any action, but for your skin. Liberté, égalité, fraternité, liberty, equality, fraternity, is the national motto, displayed proudly on every school, city hall, and public office. But for millions of Black people living here, they're just 3 beautiful words printed on a wall. In real life, they don't get freedom from prejudice, equal treatment, or fraternity in daily interactions. A young man of African descent recalled, "I sent out over 60 internship applications, no replies. Then I tried using a fake name, Pierre Lefebvre. The next day, I got an interview." In France, some doors only open when you change your name, your voice, or your skin color. Black people get denied housing because your name doesn't sound French. They're graded lower in class even with equal or better scores. They're cut from good jobs, not due to lack of skill, but because they don't fit the image of what a French person should look like. And in the most ordinary moments, waiting for a train, walking around, shopping, Black people in France can still be stopped by police. No specific reason needed. Skin color alone is enough. Japan, polite but unwelcoming. If there's a place that makes you feel quietly and gently excluded, it's Japan. This country is praised for its safety, civility, and meticulous order. But for many Black people, Japan isn't just about spotless train stations or polite bows. It's also an invisible wall, built from silent stares, polite rejections, and doors that close with grace. No one screams in your face, no one openly discriminates against you, but you're still denied housing, not invited to interviews, or labeled dangerous simply for your appearance. You'll hear slurs on the street, usually whispered, but enough to let you know you're not welcome. Black people in Japan live in closed spaces with no strong community to lean on, no representation in media or politics, and no outlet for the weight of being seen as different. They learn to stay quiet, shrink themselves, and move gently, as if every action might be too much. A Caribbean man who lived in Tokyo said, "I was never afraid of being attacked in Japan, but I always felt like I wasn't supposed to be here. And so they leave. No anger, no blame. Just the quiet realization after years of trying to belong. In a society that prizes absolute conformity, being different is already reason enough to be excluded. Australia, where comfort exists but belonging doesn't. Australia, in the world's eyes, a promised land. But for many black people, the door never fully opens. Australia, to the world, is a promised land. Clean air, modern hospitals, peaceful streets, and enviable social welfare. A place everyone wants to reach to build a new life. But for many black people, especially those from Africa or the Caribbean, this place feels like a beautiful, well-furnished house, where the front door is always slightly ajar. They might live here for 10 years, 20 years, have stable jobs, children born in Australia, even citizenship. But every time they step outside, the looks they receive still make them wonder, am I truly accepted yet? At the supermarket, they're watched as a potential threat. On the bus, strangers choose to stand rather than sit beside them. In job interviews, recruiters glance at their names, then hesitate. A man of Kenyan descent said, "I've heard their tone change the moment I answered the phone, that polite Australian accent. But when I showed up for the interview and they saw I was black, the air turned cold. They said, 'We'll be in touch,' and never called back." Discrimination doesn't come from policy. It comes from small, everyday moments. The stares, the harmless question, "Where are you from?" The furrowed brows when they speak fluent English. They're not stopped at the border. They're stopped in the heart of society. Without a strong black community to lean on, many fall into long-term isolation. They can't find themselves in the media, in school textbooks, or in the stories of the typical Australian. A Nigerian woman shared, "I have everything, a home, a job, healthcare, but I can't breathe. I smile on the outside, but every night I wonder, why do I still feel so out of place?" That feeling isn't instant. It builds day by day, week by week, like a silent wound no one sees, until they begin to ask themselves, do I have to try this hard, just to be treated like a regular person? Many have chosen to leave Australia after a few years, not because they failed, but because they succeeded enough to realize one thing: Australia can sustain you, but this place doesn't embrace you. And sometimes what people need isn't comfort, but a sense of belonging. We've just walked through 12 countries where black people aren't deported, but are silently forced to leave. These are not migrations, but escapes from discrimination legalized by silence. 12 countries. Black people are fleeing. What's driving them to this decision? This video is intended solely for analysis and educational purposes. It does not represent any political stance or organization. Let's approach everything with an open and objective mindset. If you believe every human being deserves respect, share this video to help more people uncover the truth. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel to continue this journey of exposing what the world is trying to hide.